Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining my session. Let's talk about customer experience. That's what we are going to talk about today. And we are specifically deep diving into inbound marketing and CRM for startups. So if you always wanted to know things about inbound marketing and how to optimize your CRM for that, and then specifically for startups, then you're at the right place. And I'm super excited to be speaking with you. So, just a short introduction about myself. This is me. Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm responsible for the go to market partnerships in the CE region. And as part of my job, I basically speak to startups, incubators, VCs, accelerators about go to market strategies, how to optimize your startup for inbound, but also how to utilize the tools and implement them. So that's me. A little bit about what I've been doing so far. So I always like to highlight this. I'm not a trained trainer. I'm really speaking from my own experience and from speaking with startups and my partners. But just so you know a bit of where I came from, I started my own startup back in the days, long time ago in 2013, I believe, as part of my master's studies. It didn't end so well. So I quickly decided that another path might be good for me to take first. So I went to Berlin, joined Rocket Internet, and launched a B2B lending platform on the Benelux market. Then I moved to Dropbox, where I was part of the direct sales team working out of Dublin, and then moved to Amsterdam to build up their reseller, so indirect sales team there. And before I joined HubSpot, I was with HelloFresh, where the team and I set up the whole B2B side for HelloFresh called HelloFresh Go. So that was very exciting too. Really nice experience. Lot of learnings, which I will also partially share with you today. And since 2019, I'm part of the HubSpot team working with startups and entrepreneurs like yourself. So, what will be discussed today? I would love to speak with you about customer experience and how you, as a startup, can win today in the market by really not only optimizing your customer experience, but really making it remarkable. Then, what does that actually mean? What does it take to make your customer experience remarkable? I think a big part of that is inbound marketing, and not only inbound marketing, but basically a whole inbound approach among your customer facing uh, teams and processes. So that would be marketing, sales, and services. And why is this such a large opportunity? Why is it so interesting for you to dive into this? Why is it so important to focus on this? Then we will discuss quickly a little bit about CRMs and the importance of CRMs for startups today, but especially if you want to optimize your customer experience and implement an inbound approach, then yeah, what, why, and when do you need to look at a CRM system? And of course, anything else you would like to learn, I will also be hosting a live Q&A. So I would be super curious to hear your thoughts on things, questions. So please write them down and shoot them over to me. Um, so why inbound? Let's kickstart with that, right? Why inbound? Buyers are in control. I think that is not necessarily news to you, but if it is, let me sum up why they are in control, right? Buyers can find the information before they ever engage with a salesperson of the particular business that they want to buy something from. And that's no surprise, right? We all have access to Google, we have access to other information, social media, where we can interact with peers and other people that we trust. So we can find a lot of information ourselves. We might even self-purchase, right? Touchless purchases is something really big in SaaS. We want to enable people to make their own purchase decisions at their own time. Buyers have gotten better at blocking out interruptive sales techniques, and especially if we are looking into the European region, right, where we are today, is that GDPR, not only GDPR, I mean, GDPR has made it more difficult for companies to just cold email people, and actually rightly so. I think our marketing experience from the recipient as well as the sender has improved a lot because of it. But yeah, buyers have gotten a lot better at blocking them out, not only due to GDPR, but also just registering for do not call me lists, ad blockers, all of these type things. And the third but not least, buyers have a very high expectation of what that customer experience should look like. But if you have a really unique service or product on the market, unless it's patented, it's just a matter of time, basically, when your competitors might offer something similar or exactly the same. And that's okay, right? I think unless you're doing something really, really, really special that needs a patent, it's something that we need to expect and not be surprised about. And actually, it's something that is really good if people want to copy you, meaning that there is a large potential in the market. However, the point that I wanted to make here is because competitors can offer something similar to you, how can you distinguish yourself from the market? And that's by offering that um, that really good customer experience. It's very difficult for other companies to just copy that. It's ingrained in your whole organization. So it takes time to implement it, but then you will also thrive upon it. So buyers are in control. And I have a couple questions that I would love to ask you, right? Straight up questions. And I think we can all answer them really quickly. Have we been cold calling in the past 6 months? Did you enjoy the experience? How scalable do you reckon this process to be? I can probably guess that you have been saying yes, no, and not so much on these questions, right? It's not really something that you enjoy. It's kind of something that gives me also a bit of belly pain if I need to go and do this. I have been doing it in the past myself a lot. It's not so enjoyable. Then let me ask you another set of questions. Have you conducted a Google research or a Google search or research a product in the past 6 months? And that could be for something that you wanted to buy for yourself as a consumer yourself, but this could also be in a B2B setting. And I think the answer here is very easy. Yes, right? We've just been speaking about how buyers are in control. This is really logic. What we do first is we go to Google and ask a couple questions before moving forward. Did you enjoy that process? Yes, I was in control. I can do it on my own time whenever I want. If that's at night or early in the morning, I do it. I do it on my own terms. Did you make a purchasing decision? Probably, or have you even been sharing or hearing about a particular product over social media from a peer that you trust? I think these are all much more likely um, uh, to be answered with a yes, and yes, that was enjoyable. Yes, that felt quite natural to me. Um, and even though that's not rocket science, this is not always how we feel about or how we end up um, servicing customers in their customer journey. And we will dive a little bit deeper into that later on. The biggest problem with that initial set of questions, right, that outbound sales technique, Seth Godin said something really interesting. The biggest problem with the old playbook is that it fights for people's attention by interrupting them. And I highlighted that interrupting part here because that's really the essence of what is not working when it comes to outbound or just a sole outbound approach, right? You're trying to get people's attention on your terms, not on their terms. So not when they want to have attention, you're giving it to them, but you want to have their attention when you want to get it. And that doesn't work, or at least it's not optimized for high conversion rates. Let's call it like that. If you're leaving today with only just one message, maybe you're just listening to me up until this moment and then you leave, what I want you to remember is today's most disruptive companies are winning on customer experience. So really, if you look at all the things that you're doing, this is where you're going to win. So let me tell you a personal story. As I mentioned to you before, my journey up until the moment that I joined HubSpot was, I've been making a lot of mistakes myself in the past, and Up until a moment that I joined a company, we really needed, we had a couple of problems. And of course, we needed to get traction fast, something super familiar to the startups in the room here is a small team. You need to get sales. Investors are looking at you to get traction in the market. There is a limited experience, a young team, etc. So I think these are all problems that a lot of startups can relate to, right? So it was actually a B2B product that we were selling at the time. And we kind of like got pressured into, okay, we need to do something really fast. What would be really fast? We just hire a company that is going to do cold calls for us because we just multiply our team by that. That's really easy. And then everybody will just go out. It's very proactive and we will get traction. That was the idea behind it. So what did we do? We did exactly that, right? We went out, we hired a company that helped us with cold calls, and it's going to be great, they said. Well, that was, I guess, naively the expectation that was there, but it ended up not being that way, right? Unsurprisingly, to be honest. But it didn't really work. And I want to walk you through a couple of the mechanics of why that did not work and why we need to switch that mindset to make it work in the future. So if this would be a fictional buyer journey, right, and we will dive a little bit more into the details of this later on, but if this would be just a visual representation of what the buyer journey would look like and of that particular buyer that we were trying to reach, what we were basically doing is we started in the middle with that sales call over here, right? And if you could say the middle, maybe it's even the later stages of that buyer journey. So ultimately, that's not the optimized way of doing things. The problem with that is that there are numbers of problems. I listed them out here, but I think the right way is to just come back to that visual here again, is that we just did not start at the beginning. If you start a process, where would you start at the beginning, right? And I think it's just something that as we get pressured to getting traction fast, we kind of want to skip it because we believe that we get faster through the process. But to be honest, if we are trying to convert someone from this sales call to a customer, skipping all what naturally happens in a customer journey before that, it's going to be very low. So you will need to do so many sales calls, cold calls, in order to convert the people that are actually interested and willing to buy, that's not really a good use of your time, and neither is it a good customer experience. What we needed to do was start at the beginning and start to try to understand what this looked like for our customer, for our target persona, and optimize for that. And not only optimize manually for that, but make our whole system work so that people could self-serve themselves in that whole process leading up to that actual sales call. So that once your team starts to invest a lot of time in them, you're actually speaking with the right person at the right moment in time that they are ready to potentially consider purchasing your product or service. So I want to go a little bit through the steps of how you could optimize for that, right? Because it sounds so easy. Just start at the beginning. I know that sounds easier than it really is. So I want to walk with you through a couple of steps that you could think about in order to optimize for this. The first step being, who are you selling to? This might be like, oh, you might be sitting over there behind your computer thinking, Caitlin, who am I selling to? Of course, I know my buyer persona. However, I want to challenge you. Maybe this Friday, grab a couple of beers or a couple of a nice tea or lemonade and join each other on Zoom. All break out into your own session for a moment and create your own customer persona for the product or service that you're selling. Come back and have a discussion. And not only with the sales and marketing people within your team, not only the customer facing ones, but also your product people, your developers, your freelancers, your finance operational people. Because at the end of the day, you all need to be aligned behind this. And what is most of the times happening is that some people have the same understanding, whereas other people have a different understanding of what that buyer persona will look like. Of course, what I'm trying to uncover here is not necessarily those demographics, right? Not like, oh, this person is so and so old and lives in the suburbs or the city. No, you want to really uncover what is driving these people. What is driving them personally to take a next step in their career? Because personal drivers is honestly, whether it's even a B2B purchase, that's what's driving people most, right? It's just a vague, high level company goals. It's something that people tend to not relate to so well. So you really need to understand, what is this person doing? How can I help this person get to the next step in their career, get their team to be successful, and so on and so forth. There is a Make Your Buyer Persona tool from HubSpot. If you Google this buyer persona on Google, or you type in this URL, you will find it. And this is the one that you could maybe use if you're going to do that exercise on Friday evening, just before starting the weekend. And I also just wanted to show you this quick screenshot. This is a screenshot that I took myself. And it just shows you the search results for when I was searching for creating your buyer persona. And we were actually the first one hitting on the organic search results. And why I'm showing you this here is that our customer persona for selling our marketing software is actually called Marketing Mary. It's a fictional persona. It's our own persona, and this person, Marketing Mary, is very likely to be creating buyer personas for her own company and her own team. So we actually started to build this tool as an inbound marketing magnet, actually, ourselves. It's a way for us to drive leads to our websites and to convert it. So this, I just wanted to highlight it, is that we are using this as an inbound marketing tool ourselves. So just to get your kind of like to spark your creativity of what that could maybe look like for your persona yourself. The buyer journey. Let me get a quick sip. The buyer journey. So once that we are actually aligned behind our target persona, we are starting to look at the buyer journey. And that buyer journey is very individual, right? Not to forget that in a B2B setting, you're not even selling to one person, most likely. You're selling to a buyer unit, a couple of people that are involved in that decision-making process. So you want to understand what drives them individually, who's the champion of that group, who's the budget holder of that group, and so on and so forth, but also the buyer journey. And this visual I already showed. Ultimately, you want to understand, what does that look like for your buyer persona? And of course, the actual journey will look different from individual to individual, but you want to have a rough understanding of what information do they need in order to move forward, making their decision around purchasing the product or service. So if we would put basically the marketing sales machine on top of it, just to visualize what that would look like, you're trying to get someone from an anonymous, let's say, lead prospect all the way to a promoter. So you will need to work together with your team. And I think this really nicely visualizes that it's not only the responsibility of marketing and sales, or marketing just per se, it's really that collaboration between all your customer facing teams to make that work. And this is ultimately what you're going to try to do within that customer journey. So if you are thinking about those buyer stages, and I'm going to explain to you in a little bit what those mean, but we have simply speaking, 3 buyer journey stages. It's awareness, consideration, and the decision stage. All those stages will look different for everyone, and people might switch a little bit between the 3, but ultimately they will go through all these 3 stages before making a purchase decision. So if we put that and want to visualize when that's happening, you can see it over here, right? And this is ultimately with inbound marketing, the marketing piece, what you're trying to optimize for. to move people from that one stage to the other stage, and maybe self-serve them with automation in order to have the sales team connecting with these people when they are actually at the decision-making time, and not at the awareness stage, because then the sales team is probably spending a lot of time having long sales conversations with these people that are not yet ready to convert. So what do these three stages mean? I think they are fairly self-explanatory, but just to walk through them and give it a little bit of color. The awareness stage is really the stage where someone is aware of a problem that he or she has personally, or the team, or the company, right? The consideration stage is really about considering all the various options that he or she can take in order to solve that problem. I think also one of the options that sometimes gets forgotten is doing nothing for problems that aren't compelling enough, like that aren't too big of problems. You have that option often. And I think as startups, it's also about asking yourself, are you solving a big enough problem? Is it compelling enough for people to act? However, coming back on the consideration stage, it's considering all these options. Could be other competitors, could be alternatives to your service or your product. And then the decision stage, right? The stage where we are really considering the options and making a decision for any of them. So if we are thinking about the buyer journey, what we want to do as companies is enable people to go from the one stage to the other stage organically, and preferably with as least as human touch as possible, because it's expensive and it's time consuming to move people one by one from the one stage to the other. So what we want to do with our online presence is not only attracting people to our pages, but also nurturing them over time along these buyer journey stages, so that ultimately they get to the decision-making stage and choose to go ahead with us. So again, that's simply put, right? It's easier said than done. I want to talk to you a little bit about content mapping, because here at this stage, or at this step, we have a good idea of what the target persona looks like, about the customer journey that he or she is likely to take, what kind of stages this person will go through. And now we are going to think about our product or service and that target persona in combination to look at what content will help them move forward. What questions might they have that makes them not certain about moving ahead with your product or another product? Just educating them. That's really actually basically what it looks like. Educating them and making them enthusiastic and serving them with real value. So coming back to that beginning slide of interrupting people, what you really want to do is serving them with valuable content so that they can actually educate themselves and make that purchase decision on their own. Here, there is also a nice definition of what content mapping is. It's the process of planning content in a thoughtful, nuanced way that takes into consideration the different audiences and level of awareness. So that level of awareness really ties back to those three stages again, and the different audiences, to all the various target groups or target personas that you might be speaking with. So if we take on top here that customer journey again, what you in the inbound marketing, from the inbound marketing perspective, what you're trying to do is converting an anonymous website visitor or B2B persona that you're having, or B2C persona that you're having, to a customer. That's ultimately what you're trying to do. So you need to go through these three stages. Then what I would recommend you to do is try to start to think about what that content in these three stages could look like. So here you're really trying to think, okay, in those awareness stages, where is this person likely to consume his or her content? Is that social media? Does this person read business magazines? Do they listen to a particular podcast? Or do they connect with a particular thought leader in that space? Where do they consume their their education before making a purchase, and those awareness stages about a problem. Then consideration, if they are considering these different options, where do they go? Do they go to comparison websites? Where might they go? So that ultimately in that stage, you're going to try to optimize and be present there so that you can have an influence upon what they are deciding or like what they are going through in the consideration stage. Same goes, of course, for decision. What I think is also important here to highlight is that the type of content that you push out in this, or that you, I should maybe not say push out, but that you create and make available to people in these different stages all look different. So you have really clear awareness pieces of content and decision pieces of content. So I will walk you through that with an example. But here there's a content mapping template. So you basically create your buyer persona, right? One of the personas that you're having, you write it down, and then you're going to look into those 3 stages and see what you're going to create in order to help them move forward. So here there's an example, Jenny, the gym owner. She's new to gym ownership. She doesn't have a lot of experience, etc. So here you see also a little bit of what is really driving her, right? Aside from those plain demographic things that we know about our persona. In the awareness stage, you might create a blog, right? You might be writing something like the beginner's guide to gym equipment. Jenny is new to being a gym owner, so this is not necessarily even so much about our gym equipment is the best equipment on the market. This is just really to educate people on choosing the right equipment when they just start out having their own business. So those kind of very easy, accessible, broader content like blog posts, the 5 tips for this and that, infographics, if your buyer persona likes to interact with that, those are all ideas of awareness stage content. And if we look at the decision-making content, it's much more about, okay, getting them onto a demo. Having maybe a webinar where we specifically go through a couple of the features, or where we have office hours for people to really ask specific questions, because this is the moment where you really want to interact and where you want to maybe have some more specific on your product or your service. If you would like to map your content and you would like to think about that in a more like strategic way, please download this content mapping guide on HubSpot. It's another one of our inbound marketing templates, but really it's very useful. So if you would like to get a bit of a better idea about that, then feel free to take that. Then the assets in place. And this is really, this session, we are not going to deep dive into all the assets and the place that you can think about, because this is really, we could host another whole session about this, but this is meant to spark a bit of your ideas, right? Your creativity. Build your marketing machine just like you build your product. And what do I mean with that? Publish early, publish often. I get often the question, Caitlin, what should we write about? I mean, you're probably the best person to start writing about something. I really encourage you to get your whole team involved. You have a lot of resources within your team. It doesn't necessarily need to be outsourced to a freelancer. Start with some smaller pieces. Don't invest weeks to create a white paper. Start with some easy blog posts and try to understand how these resonate with your audience. Speak with your audience to see if that is really content that they like to interact with. Here are a couple of other ideas. Of course, the data-driven blog, I think it's a no-brainer to build out on a long time. It's not just about posting content, it's about mindful content, right? Thinking about also not only the frequency and the amount of content that you have, but also the backlinks that you might be getting from other domains, right? To build up your authority within Google. Well, going a little bit off track here, but really a couple of other things. I think video really resonates well with a younger target group. So if you have a younger target group that likes to interact with video, dive into that, right? Don't write whole ebook papers if people don't like, if your target group doesn't like to read long pieces of text. The value calculator, I think, is also something really interesting if you're selling a product that is having a clear ROI and you would be able to help people get a picture of that with a value calculator. I think that's a very powerful tool too. So here are a couple of ideas, but I'm mindful of time, so I'm moving forward to touch a bit upon CRMs, right? Another sip. For the people who are not aware of what a CRM is, it stands for Customer Relationship Management. And as the name suggests, CRM software is a system for managing those relationships with your customers. Really, so that is really a place to store and track your contact details, your company details, and all the things that you need to track in order to optimize your company or your customer relationships. So who should use a CRM? This is also a question that I get asked a lot, and I think there are likely two groups of companies that often see the most benefits. So easy set would be B2B companies because they typically need to track leads and customers along a long sales cycle. So a lot of things are happening and updates need to be made. So this is quite straightforward that B2B companies tend to use or need a CRM system, but also considered purchases by B2C companies. So if you have B2C companies that aren't transactional, right? If the customer journey in the sales cycle is something that you need to follow because the purchase is high enough that it makes sense to really follow that, and your customer lifetime value of that particular customer is high enough, then that makes sense too. So a jeweler, a realtor, these are also type of B2C companies that are likely to use a CRM system. Why? I think there are many different reasons of why you want to use a CRM system, right? So I wrote down, I think it's 12 reasons why. I guess this is not an exhaustive list, but what I think visualizes it better is this screenshot, right? It's a screenshot of what I see many startups doing is trying to track their customer interactions in a Google or Excel sheet. So how is this sheet going to support this buyer journey? That's basically the question that I would like to ask you, is knowing that the customer journey is so valuable and is going to give you so much data, is so important for that customer experience and that buyer journey, is how are you ultimately going to manage that in a Google sheet? And maybe that works when you have a very simple customer journey today. You, of course, want to set yourself up for success when you're going to scale too. So if you're doing something like this right now, which I see a lot of startups doing, and not only startups, actually a lot of other companies too, is that with a couple of these tools that you might be having, you are probably only likely to track part of that customer journey, and then still they are all siloed in different tools. So if you want to understand your campaign attribution all the way down to when a customer became or a company became a customer after interacting with your sales team, it's probably really difficult to connect those data sources and to draw real good conclusions of what is working and what is not. So that is just a couple of things that I would like you to think about, and why I think this is really powerful to visualize why a CRM for companies and for startups is so important. Of course, CRM is doing a lot more, and this really nicely puts it. So it's not only a place, actually, this is the representation of what HubSpot is doing. So it's also a lot more than just a CRM. It's a CRM platform, which also allows you to do a lot of your marketing, sales, and services in the different hubs. So really, it's one platform in which you can optimize that whole customer journey. So not only from all the way from the beginning, your content, whether that is on social media, landing pages, etc., to your automation, your data, your reporting, and so on and so forth. So that's really what you want to be looking at when choosing a CRM. Is this what part of the buyer journey is this going to serve for me? Am I able to, within this platform, to serve that whole buyer journey or somehow connect the different stages of that buyer journey? There are tons of different tools that you can use that solve for a particular part of that. And I think I often get asked this question of what is HubSpot then doing? And although I don't want to deep dive into what HubSpot is doing, it's basically optimizing that whole customer journey and allowing you to combine all those tools in one. Here is that representation of what HubSpot is doing. So really, it's one layer on which you can build not only your content, your messaging, your automation, your reporting, and your data sources, from a prospect that is anonymous all the way to your promoters. So when is it the right time to adopt a CRM? Very popular question too. I think there are a couple of things that you could think about, and oftentimes it's the most urgent when things start to break, right? It becomes tough to manage your data in a flat structure like a spreadsheet. So of course, not all the data that you want to track, you're able to track manually. Jumping between different places where your data lives and comes from becomes too difficult and slows your team down. And the third is an employee leaving. And as a result, you have a loss of data. I think this is also something that a lot of startups can relate to. And that's just a waste, or just inconsistencies, right? My neighbor is actually having the same conversation with the company as well, but we might not know from each other because we are all using just our inbox to organize our communication with customers. So while you may be able to get by for a while without a CRM system, adopting one sooner is often better than waiting until you feel the pain of of implementing an ad hoc solution that you've outgrown. So this is really the message that I want to give you. If you are building a company for scale, you really need to ensure that you are setting yourself up from day one. So think about not only what is solving for you today, but if you are that ambitious startup, want to grow and scale, what is going to serve you over time too? Because people that went through this, also migrations and so on, once that you scale and feel pain, that's where it becomes more tricky, let's say. So think about that, whether that is HubSpot or it's something else. Think about that when choosing your tools, your whole tech stack, basically. What software are you using? I'm really curious to hear what it is that you're using yourself. This presentation was presented to you by HubSpot for Startups. So of course, that is my team. We have a program that you as a startup can join. It's available to startups who are affiliated with one of our approved partners. And these partners are VCs, incubators, and accelerators. You can find them online. You can search for hubspot.com/startups, where you will also be able to access a lot of education, training, like what we are doing today, but we are doing large scale sessions as well. And of course, we have a lot of downloadable assets too, specifically for startups. And then of course, the pricing. So we have benefits for startups who are joining our program. We don't do that through credits like maybe other technology providers, but we have discounts based upon your funding level. So you can find all the details online about that there too. I also want to highlight our academy, which is a really, really great place to learn not only about our tools, but also just about the methodology. I actually used this a lot when I was onboarding people back when I was working for another company where we used HubSpot tools. It's really to onboard, for example, the salespeople, marketing people, to make them understand what is inbound, but also the latest and greatest on the marketing trends for 2021 and things that we are doing there. So really would urge you to check that out. And I hope you're all as excited as I am. I am. And yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great day if I don't see you today again.